Hello humans, Master DinnerFlax here, and today I decided I'll go on my craziest rant ever, and this one's going to be very interesting because, I don't know when it was, but I think it was yesterday or the day before. I, was like, man, I can't believe Metamorphosis was in the game ever, because I was building some T-Hero deck for old school duels, and then I was like, man, what all can Metamorphosis summon? So I decided, yeah, I'll take a look. And the more I looked, the more I realized that the things it summons are not actually that. So I'm going to go straight to the point. Metamorphosis has been power crept. And I'm going to explain why as of right now. I have two setups of this. One page, and then I have another page of this. Of every monster that Metamorphosis can summon that has an effect. And an effect that matters when summoned off of Metamorphosis. So, yeah, you can summon more monsters off this, but either they're normal monsters, or they can't have an effect if they're not fusion summoned. So, let's get into this. So, first and foremost, Millennium Eyes and Thousand Eyes. These are probably some of the most powerful cards you can summon off this card. And a little issue is that, Millennium Eyes, it still needs... it's still got the weaknesses it already has. And this one is different because it's summoned. It's not going to die off instant fusion. So your opponent has to out it with an effect. But let me ask you something. So you're attributing a specifically level 1 monster instead of playing instant fusion to summon restrict? Then there's another problem going on. So next, the most commonly played level is level 4, and this is the one effect monster you can summon off of it. Everything else is either banned or can't be summoned off of it. And this card's not very good. Now, this is the only one where I'm like, sorry. This is the only one where I'm like, that's kind of gross, but that's about it. So, here's my point. Metamorphosis, in order to use, you have to attribute a specific level, then have to have that specific leveled fusion monster in the extra deck that can be summoned off of it and doesn't have the must be fusion summoned restriction. Then, you gotta think about this. So, the Master Rule 4 didn't go away. You still have to have an open monster zone, have a level, have Metamorphosis, and then in your extra deck, you have to have the corresponding fusion monster's level. And if it's at 1, why would you ever play this card? Literally, why would you ever play this card at 1? It's unreliable. It'd, be a Cyber Dragon tech to get Rampage out. And, here's the thing. Rampage, the interesting thing, you literally just summon it. It has no effect if not fusion summoned. I actually forgot about that when I put this in here. But yeah, no effect when summoned off of Metamorphosis. Now, these cards, there's a few others that have the same kind of effect. I think Ryu Shen is the last one. These are, some of the best to summon off of, because this negates normal spells, and effect monsters destroyed by battle with it are negated. So it's like an Etruria Beast, but only for normal spells. So Pendulum spells are fine. And it's this is probably one of the best ones, and it's still not that great. Same kind of thing. Negates flip effects, and can't be targeted by traps. Wow. That's a sign of the times. This card can, and it kind of has what it already did, except you can't summon it back, so if you wanted, you couldn't even Fusion Climb and Fright Furs with this if you Metamorph. And also, how do you summon this in Fright Fur? Because otherwise you can't use this. Every Invoked can be summoned off of Metamorphosis. But I have to ask you something. If the card's at 1, why would you play it instead of actually just playing Invoked? A really good deck. Because here's my point with Metamorphosis. fusion summoning has come a long ways. I've described this before. It is so easy to actually fusion summon than it's ever been, that if you put in a single Metamorphosis in the game, no one would play it, because if they wanted to summon something that's a fusion monster, they have cards that can do it better than Metamorphosis. And that's just a fact. That's how it is. It's literally easier to fusion summon than it is to use Metamorphosis, because everything that fusion summons is searchable. And not just off of Darling Cobra. There are actually even more ways to search fusion cards. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I mean, I guess Cowboy for game if you have a level 5. Okay. It doesn't matter. This card's got a... It's like Beals, but worse. This card actually has a pretty okay effect, but it's not very good. This one's neat, but you have to play level 6 in DDs, and your only level 6 you'd ever play is actually that guy, and he's a hard once per turn. You don't play any level 6 in Metal Foes, so you can't use him. This is a... How do I put it? It's a quick play soul release, and then it gains 200 for each. But you have to play level 6. This negates normal traps and can't be targeted by spells. Okay. That's a sign of the times as well. This card has no effect except it gains 500 during the battle damage calculation. This one's neat, but you have to play level 7. And then, depending on how many monsters your opponent controls, it gains effects. But it's actually got a really interesting effect. If your opponent controls 4 monsters, it doesn't matter, which is kind of funny. But if your opponent controls 3, you literally negate everything. But if your opponent controls 2, it gains 40. It's at 42. And if it gains 1, it can't be destroyed by battle. But they don't gain those effects. They're completely dependent on which effect, depending on how many monsters your opponent controls. So it's kind of terrible. This card, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. This card's neat and allows you to search fusion cards, which is one of them I'm talking about. But kind of just like, it's cool. But you have to play level 7. So here's an interesting one that would actually have the most impact. But I want to tell you why this doesn't matter. Because... So the deck actually would rather go Absolute Vortex than Metamorphosis, because Metamorphosis is unsearchable. And let's say you have both Absolute and Vortex, you're not going to have the open monster zone. And that's the key. That's the whole thing about this card, is like, what does this card truly get you that makes it ban-worthy? And I've been looking and looking, and I've come up with around 2 cards. And this was almost one of them, but it's kind of terrible. It's actually really terrible to summon off of it. But it's a really good card, but only in Pendulums. If you have Astrograph, and you decided you didn't want to make Absolute for some reason. So if you couldn't make Absolute, and for some reason you drew Metamorphosis, then you could make it. Neat. Doesn't matter. This is one of them I was talking about where it's like, this is probably the worst thing you can summon off of it. But first off, you have to have a level 7. You have to give up your entire board. And if your opponent has an out, not a monster, it loses. So this is the worst thing you can summon off of it. You need to play level 7 to do it. And then, if you meet both those conditions, if your opponent has an out, not a monster, you lose. So literally True Draco just instant. So this is like one of the worst cards you can summon off of it. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. And this is the second worst. But, like I said earlier, fusion summoning is so easy that it's actually more consistent to fusion summon than Metamorphosis this. And besides, what FTK deck plays a level 8 regularly? So, I mean, I guess you can do one for another, but that's terrible. Doesn't matter. And like I said earlier, all the invoked. This one's neat, but you have to play a level 8 in Dark Magicians, which is a little difficult. This one's... it's like... It's a negation, but you have to play level 8, like I was saying earlier. This is like one of the best ones, too. Like, this one's pretty bad. It literally does... like, all these have, like, effects now where it actually starts to do things. But again, what I'm describing is they're doing things that, like, if you're tributing a level 8 monster, you are probably tributing a monster that already has a good effect. And this is my ultimate point. By the time you get to levels of fusions that start having good effects, you have to realize you're paying Metamorphosis and paying a good monster, because you're not playing a level 8 vanilla, you're paying a good monster and Metamorphosis, which if it at 1 it would be insanely inconsistent to summon something that really didn't pay off. And that's my ultimate point of this video, is that Metamorphosis, I believe, can come back, because the most powerful things it can summon off of it are, for the most part, not worth it. If Metamorphosis went to 1, no one would play it. But because of how Yu-Gi-Oh! Players are so very zealous of how, like, they're way overzealous of the ban list. They think everything on there is just supposed to be on there. But the truth is, there's a lot of cards on that ban list that really don't need to be there. Like, Metamorphosis was a dictating card of its time, but that doesn't mean this time. It means 2005 and 2004 when it was printed. The card has seen its days. It can do neat things, but if you put it at 1, no one will ever try it, because it would be inconsistent, pointless, and it wouldn't it wouldn't summon anything that you didn't already have on the field. And that's the truth. Whatever you summon off of this card is either only going to be slightly better than what you had, or it's going to be just as good, but you paid 2 cards to make it. So yep, that's about it. Thank you all for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this literal madman talking about something literally crazy. But I feel that it's important to realize, just because a card's on the ban list doesn't mean it needs to be there. And just because it was good back then doesn't mean it's good now. Do I think this card's coming back? No, absolutely not. Because the card kind of... So it's really interesting, because this card doesn't actually hinder future card design. Because if you want to make a fusion that shouldn't be summoned off this, you literally have to write must first be fusion summoned. And that's it. So it doesn't limit card designs, but it would limit ink you have to use to print that card. So my reason that this card can't come back is because they're too scared of it coming back. They don't want anyone to find some kind of insane combo with this one unsearchable card. The card, I truly believe, can come back, but I don't think it ever will, because I guess every 1,000 moons it can steal a game because your opponent was an idiot and they didn't play outs to Last Warrior or Thousand Eyes or Strict and they couldn't attack. Like, that's about it. And I doubt there's any FTK that gets better from this card. So, yep. That's about it. Thank you all for watching, and remember, Master DinnerFlax will take your